Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Once again, Joel, you are the inspiration behind today's topic because you posted some funnies this week. You posted some really cool. I mean, they were good. I love the one about the doctors on strike.
Yes, yes, I love one of my favorites. Yes,
that was good. And for people who aren't on Joel's Facebook feed, what you see is an image of a man in surgical garb carrying a placard that has gibberish written on it because it's written in physician's script, so nobody can read it. And of course, the headline says something like "Physicians on strike, but nobody are quite sure why."
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Seriously, and working with a bunch of doctors, that's so accurate because they just scribble.
So physicians of the world, don't ever bother going on strike without hiring a publicist because no one will have any idea what you're on strike about.
Yes, clearly. That's great.
I laughed out loud. I don't laugh at too many of these memes. I laughed at that one.
That was good.
LOL.
Yes, that's good.
It was good. And the other one that I saw was about the caramelized onion relish that got
criminalized
onion relish. And of course, the other thing I could think of to comment was, well, I didn't realize onion relish was illegal. So thank you for letting me know.
Well, there's, as you know, and that's what our topic is about. I am 100% a big believer in humor, laughter. It's not only just for the law of attraction, but life in general. One of the things that I was reading the other day, this sociologist was writing sort of the hierarchy for men looking for relationship with women, and usually normal first-time relationships between 20 and 30. Sure. And they went through what really mattered, what really mattered. And number one was, in fact, shockingly, looks was not really high on this at all. Number one was the ability or the future ability to provide for the family. That was, a mother, a future mother is going to have kids. Can this guy provide for the family? Right. So that's almost a big criteria. The second, believe it or not, was humor. If there's an old saying, there's a comedian says, if you can make a woman laugh, you can marry her. It's just the idea that humor is a universal solvent. I use humor all the time, sometimes to help break clients through some really rough times. And some of my very difficult times, I always look for a way to try to find out to laugh. I share all the time of some of the funny things that happened earlier after TJ died. It made me laugh. And those were very healing moments. So laughter, humor, it releases chemicals in the brain. It also it almost always elevates a mood. It really does. It's just, it's contagious too.
I've also found that it's a great humor, or the lack of humor, let's put it that way, is a great indicator of something that you're stuck on that you need to work on. Because if you can't laugh at it, you're stuck on it.
Yes. And that's a great point. And, when you have, when you're going to a lot of the stuff I work with, and I'm always joking, kidding, but I have a very serious job sometimes. And so I don't just use it when it's not appropriate to use it, but when I'm able to get to a place where humor unites it, and you feel very comfortable. I love people that get my sense of humor. I have a very weird sense of humor, which and so when people really understand me, I sometimes, like, when people say, "Are you being sarcastic?" I'm going, yeah, I mean, I don't know any. Yes, the answer is always yes. Yes, of course I'm being sarcastic. There is no any other thing for me. So the idea of just, I like to look at things, not that things aren't serious. I deal with, as I said, a lot of serious things, but being able to laugh at yourself, laugh at your mistakes, laugh at stuff that's gone on. It really changes the dialogue. Laughter to me signals there's hope. Laughter signals to me that, when you're totally depressed and you can't move, a belly laugh can raise you 5 spots in the emotional guidance scale, probably just
easily.
Boom. Yes. Yes, I mean it changes things, and I always look for things that, and not everything that makes me laugh, makes other people laugh, makes me laugh, but I just like the absurd. I like the stuff that isn't even intended to be funny, and so
Yeah.
I find things, and I one of my favorite things that my son TJ used to do. TJ did not. He was very literal with everything,
Hmm.
and so he did when he moved in with me. He was like 10 years old, and he was very literal, and everything for me was nothing was literal, really. It's just sort of, and so funny, this is a true story. So we were driving down to Florida to meet with my parents, first time they were going to meet TJ. And so we were going to go have dinner. So on the way down, I get a phone call from a client, and it pops up on the computer, on the screen in the car. His name's Jerry, just first name Jerry. So I answered, said, "Hey Jerry, how you doing? Things are good, blah, blah, blah." I said, "I'm out of town. Let me get back with you in a week or two and we'll get together." So TJ asked me he goes, "Do you know Jerry Springer?" And I go, "Yeah, of course." And I just moved on. Like, of course I do, And so we get to my parents' house, and Mom had cooked a wonderful dinner, and we were talking. And so in the middle of dinner, TJ goes, "Oh my God, my dad knows Jerry Springer."
Yeah. Right.
And I'm like, "Okay, I got a lot of explaining to do now." So we had so many experiences that were just humor because of the way I was, and then he eventually got it and all that. But there was such a fun period of time where he would ask me, "Is that sarcastic thing right now, or are you actually being serious?" And so we had to distinguish between that. It was always funny. It was always this great laugh, and he got a kick out of it too, because he'd never really experienced something like that. So
It's a great point, though, because it's an example of how you really do have to learn humor in some ways.
yes,
You have to
yes,
learn, first of all, to distinguish what is humor, and second of all, once you distinguish what it is, you have to learn how to laugh at it.
yes.
It's actually a skill, really.
It really is, and that's important to learn how to identify. There's certain people that some people find like Jim Carrey. A lot of people find hilarious.
Right.
I don't particularly find him hilarious. Not nothing personal, but that overly dramatic slapstick stuff isn't really funny, to me.
Hmm.
A lot of people obviously love him, very,
Oh,
very,
yeah.
very successful. And it doesn't mean I haven't seen some stuff he's in that I enjoyed, but it's just not my type of sense of humor. So it's also very personal what is funny to you,
Yeah.
and what really makes you laugh. And people that can't joke around. So I'm giving a talk one time, and uh, I'm in front of this. I was pretty nervous. I'm in front of several on I think the Northeastern United States psychiatric, blah, blah. I was giving this big talk in front of a bunch of psychiatrists.
Okay.
And so one of my friends, it was for neuroscientists, it was for psychiatrists, and I was sort of giving, trying to support the concepts of the law of attraction, neuroplasticity, and it's a tough sell to some of those guys, but they're always respectful. So there's a friend of mine. So back then I had notes on my phone, and so I'd keep my phone there on it. And so a friend who was watching, and he said, "Look, if I'm going to text you if there's a point I need to make or you need to make, and that might help." And he was always very good at that, very serious about it.
Hmm.
So I haven't get to a point in my talk. It's going very well. Everybody's engaged, and I said, I think it's really our duty as people that are helping people, our duty as physicians, to really make sure they're understanding this whole concept. So what he does is he texts me this things that you said duty. Now, and imagine sitting there.
Like, what are you supposed to do with that in the middle of a presentation?
Yeah. And so I'm sitting there and I'm looking at him, and he has this just stern face on. He's not giving it away. So I'm sitting there trying not to laugh in front of all these people, and and I'm trying to not lose my place.
Right.
And and afterward, and I was able to hold it together, and I didn't have to tell everybody what happened. And afterwards, I was like, "Oh my God, he died laughing." And so, I mean, stuff like that, just weird little things. And they're also, I have a tendency when you're not supposed to laugh, I'm really bad at laughing.
Ah, that's not a
And
bad thing to have, by the way.
well, it depends. As you know, I'm about to tell a story where that probably will be different. So,
Yeah, this is true. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm kind of waiting
yeah,
actually.
yeah. So I'm at a funeral for a friend of mine's mother,
Mm.
and very serious place. And I love this woman. She was very sweet. And this isn't anything about her. But this guy comes up, and this just seems so inappropriate. So this guy walks up. A few people got up and spoke, talked about some of the great work she did. She was a great volunteer person, and so she's also was a big fan of the clarinet. Okay, so random thing, and I'm like, okay. So this guy just walks up. Nobody has it, and he pulls out of his briefcase this clarinet
Oh
and
wow.
just starts playing the song in the middle of the funeral. And I'm looking around going, is anyone else out there about to die laughing because this is, and he's playing this like really happy clarinet song, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I really can't believe that nobody else is about to die laughing. And so, you know how you'll bite your lip?
Yeah.
I'm sitting there, I'm biting my lip, and
Yeah.
but then I'm good. But then her son, who is a lot like me, he turns around with this, he gives me this deadpan look like he's trying not to laugh. So as soon as we make eye contact, I just act like I'm coughing and I have to get up and leave. I couldn't hold it in after he looked at me. And he ends up acting like he's crying and gets up and leaves too. Just because it was so absurd for this guy to, and turns out nobody in the family knew he was going to play the clarinet in the middle of the funeral.
Wow.
It was a surprise to everyone.
Yeah.
And again, one of the more humorous moments in life. Other people would go, is it really that funny? It really was in that
Well,
moment.
I could tell a similar story actually. While I was still married, my let's see, he wasn't my brother-in-law. He was my sister-in-law's husband, and so it was a once removed kind of a deal. There was no actual marital connection going on there.
Right.
But anyway, he passed, and there was a funeral for him and a wake, and the wake. I mean, I'm sure you've been to wakes. Wakes are not the most pleasant things to be at. They're pretty miserable, actually. Um, the funeral was a little bit better, but it was very serious, and the way that the priest was presiding over it, it was extremely serious. And at the key moment, I don't remember exactly what the priest said, but he was saying something about, in a very solemn voice about the solemnity of the moment and so forth. Someone's ringtone went off on their phone, and literally everybody just chuckled right there.
Yeah.
It just broke the spell.
Yes.
And it was one of the best things that could have happened. As like my ex said at that point, she kind of leaned over to me and she said, "That's the best thing that could have happened."
Yeah, I agree.
Joe would have hated this. He would have
Yeah.
hated what was going on.
Oh,
He wanted
yeah.
people to laugh.
Yes, yes. And that's exactly. And also a lot of first responders, paramedics, police officers, they walk into some unbelievable scenes. I mean, they walk in and they often will use humor as a way to filter it. People think they're not being serious or whatever. They're being very serious, but they just need this moment of let me break this. I just walked into a suicide with a gun scene. That's not a pretty sight.
Yeah,
and
it's a mental health move.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's encouraged. Obviously amongst themselves. It's certainly not frowned upon. I don't know if it's actually encouraged, but it's understood that there's humor in that. There's not humor in the event. It's very sad, but humor will break that ice. It'll bring you back to some kind of, wow, I'm seeing surreal stuff. And this is something that, my brain is going to be traumatized by this. And humor, I have a theory that, no way to prove this, but I think humor can help mute trauma. It can help not fix it, but it brings back a piece of it, because trauma puts the body into this state of shock. It's the central nervous system and all that's in shock. So humor for a moment can take have an effect of muting that.
Yes.
And I think that's a really good thing to have. And, I told you the story about me laughing at the kid peeing in the backyard after
Yeah.
TJ died, and I don't know why that was so funny to me then, but it was it was just such an absurd scene, and
Right.
it was at that moment of me laughing that for once I realized I'm going to be okay. I'm going to because
Yeah.
I hadn't been able to laugh at it. So this little kid made me laugh. He had no idea he made me laugh, but he made me laugh, and that gave me the things are going to be okay sign in my brain.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, going back to that same passing, my then sister-in-law, of course, she was the widow in that particular situation, and she her late husband's family was all Catholic. She was non-religious Jewish / Baptist, so it was fish out of water kind of a situation. And she very dutifully went through the whole thing just the way the Catholics would want to do it and so forth. But you could tell after a few hours of this stuff, she was wiped. She was really wiped out emotionally, especially because she lost her husband. And I found myself sitting with her at a table. She was basically being ignored by all of the relations on the other side. And so I just started talking to her. I said, when I met Joe actually the day that Louise and I married. And I didn't really get any chance to talk to him after that. So I told her that. And I said, I never really found out who he was. Tell me who he was, because I don't really know Joe. And in that moment, she shifted entirely into the mode of what she loved about him and started telling me stories. And she started telling me these funny stories about how they met and about how he used to tease her and how he used to, push her buttons in order to get her to do stuff and so forth. And it just brought out all of the happiest memories for her. So
Yes.
laughter actually became a way to release all of that horrible anxiety that gets built up when you go through a loss like that.
Yes, absolutely. And it is I think it's a part of the defense mechanism in the body. And humor, humor is everything that we are able to do has a reason. The body, the ability to laugh has a reason, and it's meant to. I know a lot of people. There's studies on people that while they were healing from seemingly inoperable cancers, just laugh the entire time. They all their whole job was to find things that made them laugh and just
Right.
laugh, and
Yeah.
that puts the body in a very healing state. It's very
That's right.
helpful. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it has been documented. Many people have been able to extend their lives or even some cases overcome it just because they laugh. They laugh on a
Yes.
regular basis.
Yes, completely. And that's big.
That's huge.
Yeah. So,
Better
I
than
mean,
medical science can claim, really.
yes, of course. Well, I mean, yeah, there's been healings that people that implemented that along with other techniques that have healed themselves from what was perceived as incurable. That,
Right.
you're going to be dead in 6 months type things. And so humor amongst kids, kids laugh at everything. I'm going to butcher this statistic, but it's roughly the same thing. An average 6-year-old laughs something like 250 times a day.
Yeah, it's probably not all that far from the truth. Yeah.
Yeah, and an adult laughs an average of 5.
I'm amazed it's that many, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, now what I'm saying, I'm butchering.
I quoted during the show today, so I'm done.
Yeah. So, but and of course, there's people that do much more. But I know people that never laugh. They don't find humor in anything, and people that are depressed have a hard time finding humor, as we mentioned. So, the idea of humor therapy, for lack of a better term, or finding stuff you want to watch, or and sometimes it could be just the most bizarre things that make you laugh. But just laughter amongst your friends, laughter among just people that tell jokes. I like people that tell jokes that don't know how to tell jokes because they're more funny and trying to tell
They're
the joke.
actually funnier just because they don't know how to tell the joke.
Yes, I love that. And it's so just being able to find absurd things to me. I operate in the absurd all the time, and I just like to. It makes me laugh.
I don't remember if I've told you this, but my sister has a theatrical background. She trained in theater in school, and she has done community theater for a large portion of her life. At one point, she was involved in creating a theater in Virginia, and it was a community theater. It was sort of a dinner theater kind of a situation. People gather, they have their dinner, and there'd be entertainment afterward. And because it was dinner theater, she wanted to keep it very light. She wanted to keep it very easygoing and so forth, non-controversial. So she created a melodrama, an old style melodrama, good guys, bad guys, Snidely Whiplash, all that kind of thing. And she staffed or casted, if you will. The cast was all locals from the community, including this one man who was, let's just say, he was not particularly bright and had no social skills. Very difficult to cast into a play, but she found a role to put him in, and it was against the advice of everybody. Everybody said, no, you shouldn't put him in. He's going to ruin the whole program if you do that. Well, she insisted everybody who wants to play should be playing. And it's not like this character had a lot of lines. I think the character had one line in the entire production and didn't have a whole lot of acting to do. So it was something that this guy could handle. Well, it came time for his one line, and I don't remember what the line was, but he butchered the line. And he butchered it in such a way that the entire audience started to laugh. And they laughed and laughed and laughed. And he was so excited because he'd always wanted to be famous as an actor and to be appreciated as an actor. Now, he never thought about it in terms of him having flubbed the line. That was not the way he thought about things. He had a very simple mind. All he knew was he had said his line, hadn't come out quite the way he intended, and everybody's laughing, and he loved it.
Yeah.
He ate it up. He just ate it right up. It was such a huge moment that today my sister's running a community theater in a small town in North Carolina, and the theater is named after this guy.
Oh, wow. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great story. Yeah.
So that's the power of laughter in a way that you don't even expect. Laughter actually providing an experience, a life experience for somebody.
When, when you have a connection with somebody and you really, one of the things that I love is my sister's one of these people since we grew up together. We can be in a situation and I don't have to do anything but just give a look. And she knows what I'm thinking. It's always about something absurd. And she's trying not to, I can make her laugh, and same thing with, some good friends of mine. I can just, I can just give a look. They know what it is. And it's always humorous and it's about something, and we don't have to state it out loud. And it's just, but humor becomes a universal solvent. Humor, when you get people to laugh, it's a way to engage. If I can get a young client that's very resistant to be there, if I can get them to laugh, that's that changes things. Now that we have a connection, most of them are so guarded and don't want to let anything out. If I just say something absurd and make them laugh or chuckle, then I got them. Then the door opens.
You mentioned just a moment ago being able to just give somebody a look and you both know what it is that you're talking about, and especially where something humorous is concerned. It actually reminds me of a story, and it's a story that my father told me. It's a dad joke. It qualifies as an official dad joke. And it goes like this. There's a gentleman who was traveling abroad, and he ended up in a monastery in Eastern Europe. And in that monastery, it was a very, very unusual monastery because all of the monks had taken vows of silence, except after dinner. After dinner, they would allow themselves a small amount of conversational type interaction. And their favorite way of doing it was by telling each other jokes. They knew each other so well. They'd been doing this for so many years. They knew each other's jokes. I mean, nobody was coming up with anything new, and they kept telling the same ones over and over again. They'd actually gotten to the point where they had numbered them. And so all they had to do was just say the number and everybody would chuckle over it because they knew what the joke was.
Yes.
So this visitor, first of all, he spends during the day when all the monks are silent, and he has a guide who's allowed to speak to him while he's there and explain to him what's going on. And then he's invited to dinner, and after dinner, the joke telling starts, and his guide explains to him what's going on. And he says, well, all right, so what are the jokes about? He says, well, I'm not really sure. I'm not part of the community here, but I know they know them all real well. And one of them shouts out 26, and there's this ripple of laughter. And somebody else shouts out 14, and there's a louder laughter because I really liked that one. And there was another one that was number 39, I think it was, and 39 got a little bit of a chuckle, but it was like a more of a tipple than anything. It wasn't really one of the funnier ones.
Sure.
So the visitor said, "Well, can I try?" And the guy said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." So he shouts out, 96. And there's dead silence. And then the monks started falling over themselves with laughter. They're rolling in the aisles. They're absolutely tearing their clothes off with laughter. They're roaring with laughter. And he turns to his guy and says, "What did I do? What did I say? What's the joke?" He says, "No, you don't understand. They haven't heard that one before."
It's it's stuff. Yes, I love that.
I love dad jokes, I have to admit, because
probably
because they're clean and because they actually can be funny.
Well, they're when you have like dad jokes, really they're always, like you said, they're on point. They, I love how they hit. You know what I mean? They're most of them make me chuckle. Some of them make me really laugh. But dad jokes in general are pretty good stuff, because it's like I forget exactly how some of them go, but every time you see them, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that one, and it's really good. But it's just, again, that universal connection in laughter, when you can. When I'm in serious meetings, whether business meetings or whatever, if you can ever get anybody laughing with you, that helps a lot. People that are trying to, also, body language thing. If people are trying not to laugh or kid around, then they're hiding something as well too.
Oh yeah, it's a good indicator. It tells you a lot about the personality just in terms of how they respond to humor.
Yes, yeah, and I think the healing power of laughter, not just for us, but as far as the connection with the law of attraction and humor is, as we know, repeating what I say every week, the law of attraction only responds to what your emotions that you're feeling. Mm-hmm. That's what it matches. And laughter is happiness. It's it's fun. It's so the longer you're happy and laughing, then the more you're able to attract more things to be happy and laugh about. So it's really good. It's just a great tool to use all the way around. And when kids, I always encourage kids, like I'll see a little kid and I'll say, "Well, tell me a joke." And they always have a joke, and they very seldom get it right, which is hilarious, and always laugh. And you encourage kids to tell jokes. It's just a good thing, and it's when you connect with somebody through laughter, you cut through a lot of unnecessary stuff to really get to know somebody. Laughter tells a lot about, you really get to know somebody pretty good during something that's going on funny.
Well, it's making me wonder, because you've talked a lot here on the podcast in the past, and in past episodes especially, about like the kids you've worked with in your practice, particularly the ones where you've done it pro bono. I'm curious, do you ever use laughter with somebody like that you're having trouble breaking through?
Yes, the one I gave I've used this recently on the show too. This particularly resistant client that I had did not want to be there. He assured me he would not be participating.
Okay.
And so I got an hour to kill with this kid. So so what I do when they won't participate and respond back, I said, "Well, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions." And I have a list of 200 questions.
Oh, I remember this one. Yes, I love this. Yes.
Yeah. So we're going along, and I'm asking the normal things. What do you like to do for a hobby? I don't know. Okay. You like any TV shows? Not really. What do you do? What do you want to do with your career when you don't know? And so those are the basic questions you're expecting, right? So I keep getting more and more ridiculous with my questions. You know what I mean? I just, like I said, what's your sister's favorite food or stuff like that? Yeah. Just coming up with anything. And he gives me an eye roll. So question number 153 is where he finally broke. And I asked him, "What is your favorite beetle?"
I love the question.
And he goes, "What? Your favorite beetle? Is it Japanese beetle?" Most people say Japanese. And he's like, "Bro, this can't be serious." And I go, I got to know these things. And so now we started talking. And he's chuckling. He goes, "That's like the stupidest thing I've ever heard." I go, "Isn't it? Isn't it? Oh, really? It is." And I said, "Look, I got to kill an hour. These two, I got, about 47 more questions, and and they get more ridiculous than the Beatles." And so he laughed. He goes, "No, no, no." And so he started telling me a little bit what was going on. We ended up having a really good, like 15, 20-minute session.
Ah.
And the end result of that was the next morning, the mom texted me. She said, "I don't know what you did with him yesterday, but he says he wants to make another appointment."
Wow.
And I said, "Well, that's awesome. I didn't think you'd want to do that." And he goes, "And he told me to tell you it is Japanese beating." and and she goes, "I don't know what that means." And I go, "I do. And it's hilarious."
Yeah. That is fabulous. It's a great story because it does illustrate beautifully how to get anyone to laugh.
Yes.
Some people don't feel like they can make other people laugh.
Yes.
You just described how to do it. You just ask questions and you make each question more and more absurd.
Yeah, more and more absurd. Like one of the questions you get further down is, what is your fear of having too much nose hair? High, low, or medium? So they're like, "What are you talking about?" So it's just throwing stuff out there. But humor can be a primer to the brain. Humor can open up, conversations. When you if you're ever in a room of people drinking, they start off the evening, everybody's very stoic and quiet, and then 4 or 5 beers, and all you hear at that point is laughter, 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 loud talk, and laughter, laughter, laughter. And so it is, especially since I don't drink, and when I go to things like that, I can always tell when the alcohol started to kick in because everybody's loud and laughing. So we all want to laugh, but a lot of us have inhibitions, and like shouldn't. But once the inhibitions are removed with the alcohol, laughter becomes the main thing.
Is it the inhibitions that are removed?
From a lot of people are very protective of laughter. They don't want to give their humor side up. What's blocking is I'm very serious or whatever. And the first time I ever went to a party at our country club as an adult, ironically, they had a thing called casino night, which that's probably what drew me there.
That's probably not the best one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so first time I've been around everybody. So we're the youngest people. Me and my buddies are the youngest people. We had all just turned 21, and I was there just for casino night. I didn't care about the other stuff. So we sit down. It was weird being around everybody's parents and everything else. And so, I didn't drink much. I don't drink much, but I had a couple of drinks. But I started noticing everybody's getting louder and louder and louder. And I'm like, and they got drunk. And now all these people, the bank president is over there laughing and telling a joke. And these are people you're looking around going, "Oh my God, I didn't know they have a sense of humor at all."
Right.
Yeah. And so it does whatever they're blocking, call it inhibition or, whatever is there, the thing to block that, I want to remain very stoic. And I don't mean stoic in the way I believe in stoic, but just I'm not going to, be silly. I'm too serious of a person for this. And, 3 or 4 drinks and they're, telling the most inappropriate, hilarious jokes.
Right.
And,
Right.
Everybody laughing and clapping, and it's just so you see that. So once and that's why I think a lot of times is I always talk about kids being laughing so much, or kids being open to they don't have all that dialogue that would even want to slow down. Laughter is fun for them. The most silly things are fun for kids, and you can really. I was sitting at a table, I don't know, a few weeks ago at this dinner, and this doctor and his 2 boys were sitting beside me. I know the doctor, never met the kids before. And so apparently I heard one of them go, "Did you fart?" to his brother. And the other one goes, "No, I thought you did." And I go, "I think it was your dad." Well, they just thought that was the funniest thing in the world that we do that. And so they're over there laughing, and he's like, "Well, thanks, Joel." Now, and so it turned into this really big funny thing. It's just, the wanting to find people to laugh. my favorite people are people that I can just laugh with and that
Mm.
get it. And it doesn't mean that I'm not being disrespectful to any situation, but
No.
like I said, I just have seen absurd things and terrible things. And so some of the, my reaction sometimes is, protective and, just the humor in things, it's not being disrespectful to people to find humor at a funeral. It's something that, my son Justin gets pulled over for frequently now for speeding, apparently. And he has this tendency when he's nervous to laugh. Well, the cops don't like that.
Oh.
So we went to a court on a speeding ticket, and the cop, he laughed at me, and I go, and Justin explained, he's like, no, I'm not laughing at you. When I'm nervous, I laugh.
Mm.
And, but it's like that. There's sometimes like you don't want to laugh when the cop is asking you, are you being serious? You get me, this is very serious, and you laugh at him. That would go over well,
Yeah. So there is a time and a place.
There is a time. Yes. And also just the overall concept of us as a country can't laugh at ourselves anymore.
That's shifting. I think that's actually changing.
It is changing back, but back in the day when I was a little kid, they used to have these comedy roasts on TV. They were very common.
I remember those.
And they didn't understand politically correct at all back in those days. They just
the concept did not enter those.
In fact, it was how gross can you get?
Yes,
and
pretty much.
And it was most of it was super inappropriate. For me to be watching the age I was watching that. But there was no holds barred. I mean, you would just go all in and whatever. Well, those things have sort of the pendulum swung down on those things. There a lot of sensitivities. Well, there's been several comedians lately that have really taken on. Look, we got to be able to laugh at these things. So a lot of them came out sort of challenging this, and it's had a lot of support. Like, look, I'm not an idiot. I'm a comedian. I'm telling you. I don't believe these things. It's just a joke. We need to be able to laugh at ourselves. And so there was a roast on Netflix of Tom Brady.
Oh yeah, I heard about that one.
And it was an old school roast. I mean, they went old school, and for the most part, it was very well received. For the most part, there were a lot of people in the background saying that shouldn't be allowed. That but for the most part, and everybody I know found it very funny, and there were some ridiculously funny lines in there. It really was, and some ridiculously inappropriate lines in there as well. But it was something that the ability for us to laugh at ourselves is, not take everything so serious is really, really important to develop. I can laugh at myself. I mean, I'm the least perfect person in the world, so I have no problem pointing out, well, that was bad or whatever, I don't mind that. It's laughing at myself or laughing at my mistakes. Some of my situations, as I've said, have been extremely serious, but in retrospect, it's like, I always find something find funny. It's just how I cope.
An interesting thing you mentioned earlier on, the various positive hormones that can be invoked when we're laughing. And I actually looked this up earlier. I was really fascinated because, I mean, there are different hormones that play roles in different scenarios in our body. I mean, and we know what the positive ones are. There's the endorphins, there's the dopamine, there's the oxytocin, there's the serotonin, and they all play different roles. The one thing that really fascinated me is that all four of those are kicked into gear. They're all triggered by laughter.
Yes.
As far as I know, it's the only trigger that triggers all four of them.
I don't know enough. You're likely right.
Which is really interesting.
Yes, it really is.
First of all, it shows just how powerful laughter really is, because it's basically engaging our entire range of positive hormones. I mean, God, how much more can you ask for, right?
Yes.
But add on to that what the effects of those hormones are, because they play very important regulatory effects within the body. So if you're invoking all of the positive hormones at the same time, you're doing tremendous things for your body.
You are. And when you're in an anxious state and the body is protecting against whatever anxiety you're producing, laughter literally can just override that. And because the chemicals released, as you're saying, will almost extinguish the cortisol and some of the negative stuff that comes up from the adrenaline flow and all that. It can mute that pretty quickly. So it's almost like your own pharmacy inside of your head that is saying, boom, let's apply the most effective chemical.
Yeah, you mentioned cortisol. What we associate that with fight or flight.
Yes.
But you introduce another endorphin in there, and all of a sudden the third option becomes laugh.
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
fly, or fight, fly, or
laugh. Yeah, and
third
what
option.
well, and it's one of the, again, cortisol is it's intended for fight or flight, as we mentioned, but when you don't process cortisol and you just you don't fight or flee, you sit there and worry at it. Cortisol can be a very damaging chemical to the body. It stores fat. Right. It slows digestion. It creates a sense of unease. Well, laughter is a quick extinguisher of cortisol. Quickly, it extinguishes, like almost immediately, because of the chemicals that are released. So it's almost it's sort of like working out. Have I ever mentioned that working out's good for you? I don't
occasionally,
know.
It has come up as a topic of conversation.
Yeah. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing. But I like laughter because it's something that, there's certain people that I see that we see each other and we almost laugh automatically because we know there's a connection of something. It's there's something coming. Even if it's serious topics, we'll smile and we'll laugh. Just telling some of the absurd stories I've lived in my life, just some of the things I've witnessed, and you put yourself in all these crazy scenarios. And now that the storm has passed, a lot of those things are just hilarious. I got several casino stories that wouldn't be appropriate to tell on the show that are hilarious in their ending, just because it was such an absurd moment.
I think we've actually told some of those in past episodes. Yeah. And it's a wonderful thing. The thing that always grabs my attention when we talk about stuff like this that's on the edge is how the on the edge stuff is what we're drawn to.
Yes.
And that's part of the appeal of laughter. Laughter takes us to a place that it's like you were describing before. There are certain kinds of humor that are definitely considered to be politically incorrect, and you don't cross that line. But comedians are crossing the line, and they're getting the laughs because it's crossing the line. It is the act of crossing the line, and it is doing it in a way that is, at least to some degree, socially acceptable. It is the acceptability of it that makes it work.
Well, and I saw an article, or maybe a newspaper, or I don't know what it was, but it was a study maybe. But the idea that kind of humor actually is good for society because you see the boundary. The show All in the Family was.
Oh God, yes, there was an example of it.
Yeah. So the Carol O'Connor, but this is a very old show, so not everyone's going to understand what that means.
If you don't know All in the Family, Google it on YouTube.
Yeah. Look. So this came out, feels like, in the early 70s. Feels like. And so Carol O'Connor was this renowned actor that got this part, and he was playing the role of this blue-collar worker, racist, conservative New York City guy.
Archie Bunker.
Archie Bunker was his character's name. And the scenario was he lived with his wife and his daughter and her very liberal husband.
Right.
And so the scenario, they didn't even hide it. It was just various issues would come in. Racism. One of his neighbors was a very successful black man named George Jefferson. And George was equally racist the other way and much smarter than Archie, very successful. And they would say things to each other that would not stand a possibility of being on the air today on a TV show. Yeah. But what it did, Carol O'Connor, I saw him interviewed, and he pointed out, I'm playing this because this is how some people think. It's so absurd. I'm playing it so far over the edge. And I'm trying to point out that this is how some people think. We live in a society. He said, I am appalled by this character. He is uneducated. He's ignorant. He's racist. He doesn't have, but yet there's still some redeeming qualities in him. He loves his family and he is a hard worker. And he said, so he was trying to make the point of how we can understand other people. And the character was, again, just he played it so perfectly. He used to get letters from both sides,
Oh yeah.
people threatening him, other people supporting his views.
Yeah.
And he would actually write back to the one supporting his views saying, I need to be clear, I'm an actor playing a role. These
Mm.
are the opposite of my views. And he would
Mm.
respond with that letter to people that supported his views.
Yeah. A- And the fact that he was willing to play that character really spoke volumes about his character as
Yes.
a man.
Yes. And it was a time, before that, there was a time where there were shows like the Dick Van Dyke Show that had separate beds for the husband and wife, that
Yeah.
had, I mean, just these very vanilla, Leave It to Beaver, where
Mhm.
everything was perfectly done and
Yep.
every problem was solved and the kids were perfect and mom cooked dinner while wearing pearls and,
Yes.
all these things. And because they were projecting this really fake image. And then here comes All in the Family giving some they talked about topics like abortion, rape,
Oh yeah.
uh, you know, all kind of political stuff, and just it was
All the
very
punctuations of that era, the civil rights movement, the
yes,
Vietnam War, the Watergate thing. I mean, all of it was brought up.
yes, and so it was a platform, sort of in a ridiculous way, but it educated on some level. It also, and there was humor, and it was a hilarious show, very well written, and
Mhm.
there was an even more extreme version of that called Maud, which is a spinoff of
Oh
All
yeah.
of Them,
Yeah.
and B. Arthur, who was a very blue comedian back. She was
Oh, she
probably,
could turn
oh,
any air blue. Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
yeah. She was one of those old roasters. She would
And
go hardcore,
fearless. Absolutely
fearless, yeah,
fearless.
tough woman, and just strong comedian, big strong woman, and
Hmm.
very equal rights woman, and all that. She had the show, and it basically was an even more political show than All in the Family. They took it, every week. She's very liberal. There'd be random, conservative people come in, and they were just talking issue after issue after issue. So they used comedy back in the day to sort of deal with issues, and it worked. It's something we have lost. We don't do that anymore, really.
Well, she actually carried it on because she had an even more famous series after that called Golden Girls.
Yes,
And
yes,
that one, the thing that I think was most amazing about Golden Girls was the other actors who were in there,
yes,
particularly Betty White.
yes,
Betty White was, to me, the pinnacle of the kinds of value where humor is concerned that we're talking
yes,
about, because she always played these characters who were not particularly bright on the surface. It looked like they were pretty dumb characters, and then they would come out with these pearls. She'd come out with
yes.
these little pearls of wisdom, and it would completely change the way you thought about the character, and it would usually make you laugh when she came out with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What a great actress, comedian, and human being Betty White
Mm.
was.
Betty White
Amazing.
was terrific.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And she played that role in several variations of other things I've seen her do.
Oh
She
yeah.
she was on a show called Lou Grant.
Lou
Uh,
Grant. Yeah.
yeah. It was the Mary Tyler Moore show, actually, with
Well,
Lou
it's
Grant.
both. She was on both
Yeah.
shows. Yeah.
Yeah. And she played the same, this was a sex star, she was, but the same sort of whatever. And she was hilarious. So humor, and people that are able to deliver humor in a way, uh, the it helps. I really believe it helps. Humor can be a help resolve thing. When we start trying to censor people in their humor, you change things, and it doesn't mean you have to like it all. There is a simple solution to a lot of this: is if you don't like it, don't watch it.
Don't pay any attention to it. Yeah. You
Yeah,
mentioned those roasts back from the 1970s.
yeah,
I didn't watch them.
yeah,
I really didn't like them at all. So I
yeah.
just didn't watch. And an amazing thing happened. I wasn't offended.
Yeah, there is an off button, but there's some people that just don't, and again, that's, today you're starting to see a lot of the comedians feel it's their duty to start pushing back on that,
Mhm. Mhm.
and start, pushing the envelope, saying, look, we need a dialogue. We need to point out the absurdity of things. We need to, when you make fun of things, one of the things that, I forget the comedian that did it, but years ago, Bill Cosby was lightly accused of, drugging women and having sex. That
More than
story,
likely, he went to trial over it.
but that story came out years before it came out.
It did.
Yeah, but a comedian started hitting that.
Yeah.
This comedian started saying, why is it that Bill Cosby gets to rape people? And and he just, that became part of his show. And it was considered taboo. He was the only one that did that. Well, that eventually opened it all up where he was prosecuted and did time in jail.
That's right.
And a comedian is the one that sort of called that out. It was, I don't know if you remember that, because the charges were, I mean, the allegations were years before.
That's right. Yeah. Decades, actually, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. But this comedian said, are we going to pass on this? Or it's been revealed. We're going to turn our eye. And like it didn't happen. They told a bunch of jokes about Bill Cosby and all that. And it led to sort of an awareness that, so, again, I'm not in any way trying to say that's a great thing, bad thing on either side there. It's just the comedy serves laughter serves a purpose. It gets us thinking, especially cutting edge laughter. And it is going to be offensive. There's some things I don't need to listen to. And I know that. So if something offends me, I just simply turn it off. And the things that I laugh at, I can laugh at. And I also can delineate between I'm laughing at the absurdity of it in no way condoning it.
Let me ask you a tough question, since we're on a tough part of the topic, because anytime that we're talking about something that has a socially blocked or a socially resisted piece to it, that's always an edgy topic. Let me ask you specifically about victimhood.
Yes.
And my question is, lots of ways I can phrase this question, but I'll do it this way. To what degree is humor an appropriate tool to use to help someone stop being a victim?
A lot of times people that are stuck in victimhood will be put further into victimhood by humor. They're offended by that. So it could be a tool, but a lot of people would consider that you're now making fun of me. You're now laughing at my stuff. Not only am I I'm the victim of all this other stuff. Now you're compounding that. That's when one of the things that I will get accused of occasionally, because of my practice of the law of attraction, is being a victim blamer. Because me believing and we're responsible. I'm not responsible for what happened to me, and I've never said that. That's not what I've ever said. I've never. You know me well. I'm an advocate for people who have been through stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've never said that. I have clearly said you are responsible for healing it. I'm sorry. I wish there was another way, but there's nobody coming along to heal you over this. So I'm not blaming the victim. I'm always defending the victim. It's when people get stuck in their victimhood that life becomes so unbearable. When you argue for your disabilities, or your perceived disability, or you argue for what's wrong, when you're naming it all the time. I mentioned a few weeks ago on Instagram, a lot of young people they put their diagnosis as part of their profile.
Yeah.
It's almost like a contest of who can have the most diagnosis. And again, I'm not, that works for them, but when you accept the role that I'm stuck in victimhood, and victimhood is very dangerous. And I can say this because I had a period of time when my mindset was that of a victim. And it was the darkest, worst part of my life, because victimhood made me powerless. It made me give no options, because nothing was my fault. Nothing. So if nothing's my fault, I can't fix it. If this happened and this happened, my crappy childhood happened, and so all of this is out of my control, then that victim mindset really just got me stuck. Now that, and when we talk about this, there's people that are going to be offended by it. It's not intended to do that. I just see it in a different way. I really believe that, I know the show's about humor, and I don't want to get into a real negative thing, but when we're able to joke about things, the right mindset, you can be pulled from victimhood when you can see the absurdity of victimhood. When you see how unproductive it is. But so many people that are so defensive of their victimization, like, no, none of this is my fault because these things happen. And, and that's when we get stuck on the blame game. That's we've done a whole show on blame.
Oh yeah.
And so when you're spending all that time, defending what's not, it's like, no matter how we got here we are. Let's fix it. Let's go. We're here.
It's a good way to look at it. That was something that was, I won't say it was troubling me, but I'd been wondering about it for a long time, because I do have a fair amount of awareness of just how debilitating being in a victimhood mentality can be. And so I'm always interested in what it takes to help somebody who wants to get out of that mindset. I guess that's the first thing, they have to be willing to get out of it.
Step one is a willing, so, pre-contemplation. I need to, I identify I'm in a victim mindset and I want to break out of it. Before, nothing happens until that begins. And then being able to, it's never about, it's like, I work with a lot of kids who've been sexually abused. There's never a moment in their life that this was their fault. Never. It wasn't. You know me. I'm a strong advocate for these kids. I will. I fight for them. I'll go to court with them. Whatever's necessary to help heal them. But they're going to have to do the work to deal with the trauma. They're not. You can either live with this for the rest of your life, which a lot of people end up doing, have a miserable, depressed life, or you can say, I'm going to be responsible for healing this damage. I didn't cause it, but I'm going to fix it. It's my job. There's people that'll help you. There's people that walk with you. There's all kinds of solutions and remedies, but it's still going to require the person to take some action and get out of the fact that, nobody ever, the kid is never at fault. There's never a scenario the child's at fault for sexual abuse, ever. However, the damage is very real. And the psychological damage that usually the process of going through once it's been revealed, all that, there's a lot of stuff like that. There's a lot to work through. But you got to have that mindset. I'm not going to let this define me. I'm going to move on, and it's my job to do that.
Yeah. That's not the way we normally like to end a show, but I think it's kind of an important one to end on, because I think the main message there is hope. There is hope if we're willing to make a shift. Until we're willing to make that shift, there's not much anybody can do. But once you're willing to make that shift, now there's hope.
When I was living in my victim mindset, I had, horrible childhood. I had all kind of, bizarre stuff, just witnessed. My biological father and grandfather killed themselves. I had just all this stuff that clearly was psychologically damaging. It was, and when I got into my addiction, how could I turn out any other way? And I just sort of lived in that and believed that. And, it's not my fault because I did this. And at some point, there's nobody did this. I mean, you had a very bad childhood, as does a lot of people who don't go and do antisocial things like stealing and gambling their money away. I made a decision that I am going to be responsible for me. So it's really important. And, I work with people all the time trying to convince them to change that mindset, because it is the saddest moment. It was the most depressed I ever lived when I believed that nothing was my fault and I was a victim of all this. And because the victimhood rendered me with no action to take, because it was always somebody else's fault.
Yeah. That fault thing, boy,
I wish we could remove that. That doesn't. Here we are today. Yeah. However we got here, it doesn't do good to sit there and wallow it and defending fault and all that. It's like being in a hole. I use this analogy all the time with this, talking about blame and fault and all. So you come across a guy that's fallen into this hole and he can't get out, and the water is rising because there's a creek running into it. So are we going to sit there and debate how he fell in the hole, what led to him falling in the hole? Or are we going to just get his ass out of the hole?
Right.
And that's sort of the concept. We got to, there's a lot of wasted time. Here we are. Here I am. I'm depressed. What action can I take? What areas can I work on? It's not minimalizing the stuff. It's let's get busy doing the stuff.
And the best part is, if you are in that place, and if you can find a way, maybe with the help of somebody else, to laugh at
laughter. It also, I can laugh at my victimhood. I really can. That's I'm like, how ridiculous that I believed. I mean, I did all this stuff. I put myself in that, and I'm the one that fixed it too. So it's something that I had to just get serious about. Let's roll up our sleeves and get busy and do this.
Yeah, you had to get serious about not being serious, so you could be serious about it.
Exactly. And I did. Throughout this, I found humor.
Yeah,
I found humor in the most absurd places at times. I ran a halfway house for compulsive gamblers for a year and a half as I lived there early in my recovery, and I could do a whole show on the absurdity of what took place in the house. It was the wildest, craziest stuff you've ever met, and it was hilarious.
So there's a nice way to wind up the show on a high note, that you can find humor in the craziest, silliest, stupidest places.
Yeah.
In fact, that's where it usually is found, isn't it? It's not in
It
the
is.
mundane.
But believe it or not, I had written, along with a person that was in the house, a screenplay for a sitcom based on the concept of a sober living home.
Oh, wow.
And we actually flew out to California to meet with Brillstein and Gray, who produced a lot of the shows at the time.
Yeah.
And we had a meeting with an executive at Brillstein and Gray. They loved the idea, but you can see the timing of this. That's when the animation was taking over. Simpsons were doing crazy. Family Guy came. So they said, we're really only backing animation shows right now.
Yeah.
But your show, if we were back, 5 years ago, this is a great idea.
Wow. Timing is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been a fun show in many ways. It's been serious at times. We've gotten a lot of laughs in. So thank you for the laughs. Thank you for the insights. Thank you for the wisdom. Thank you for the contributions. We love it.
It's great. Good to talk to you. And I look forward to next week as well.
And we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.